Okay, you can't see what this is unless you really are observant and notice the color of the case, but this is obviously a 185J that has already made a number of the steps of the packing process that you saw in the other video with Bunny's machine, the 185K that was heading out to Oregon. That video cut short. I'm still having issues with my camera, so I thought I would kind of pick it up here with the hope that I can get through the final steps and show you that packing process between those two videos completed. So I'm just going to jump back into it and kind of go from there. So what we've built so far as far as a fortress of protection for this 185J that's heading out to Virginia Beach, Virginia, is we started with the machine and the base, and like in the other video, we anchored the machine and the base to each other by using stretch wrap and then tape to tie it off. We then put a layer of stretch wrap around the head of the machine and then put 3 to 4 layers of bubble wrap around that. And then we slid the case over it, and then we anchored the case and the base together with stretch wrap and then tied it off with tape. And now on the outside shell, to create one unit, we have 5 to 6 layers of bubble wrap that we then tied together with stretch wrap and then tied it off with tape. So now we're just putting our protection on the top of it from the risk of something coming down and crushing it. So we've got 4 layers of bubble wrap on this side, and we're going to be putting 4 layers of bubble wrap on the other side as well. Actually, correction, it's 6 layers. Again, the most likely scenario if something's going to damage this machine or case is going to be from the top down. So I'm putting 6 layers on top to protect the case and ultimately to protect the machine that's underneath there. So we've got close to 6 layers around it, 6 layers on top of it, and that's going to provide a lot of protection for this machine as it travels out to the East Coast. Alright, and I've already added some peanuts to the bottom of the tote that is going to be an outside protection for all that we've done here. And again, the tote I'm using is going to be an 18-gallon tote with just a bed of peanuts across the bottom to provide a little bit more protection. But first of all, we're going to add one more layer of protection to the bottom of this 185J to protect this fragile bottom base from getting damaged with it bouncing up and down and getting jostled a little bit. So we're going to provide just a little bit more protection there, and it's just my preference, but I always face the bubble out, facing out, and maybe that's about as inconsequential as which way you put the roll of a toilet paper on. But I always put 4 layers of bubble wrap on the bottom as well as an extra defense. I have to kind of put it like that until I can get my music going again and anchor this on top. It's so much harder to wrap a machine in the winter time because of that static factor. It can just drive you bonkers as you're trying to get this bubble wrap to cooperate, and it's trying to move and wiggle every which way loose. It's just crazy. Alright, so we got the top anchor, that's good. Alright, do a little flip and get this other side facing up. yeah, hopefully you've seen the post I did with Bunny's machine getting out to Oregon. As you may have remembered from reading that, she had pneumonia, was in the hospital, knew that the machine had arrived and was at home, and I think that that was part of her recovery plan. Was, I'm feeling a lot better, I've got all the antibiotics and all that stuff, and now I need to get home and see my machine. I hope that doesn't happen to Lori too. Hopefully her health is good. So we're just anchoring it on all sides. Again, what's the point in using bubble wrap to encase this 185J if it isn't anchored properly? And again, it's like anything, when you make it a single unit, it's going to be that much stronger. And I always just kind of use my hands, because you can all of a sudden, when you run your hands over the edges, you can find those points that are not anchored down. Can I hear me popping some of those? All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get this machine into the case, which is kind of where the other video kind of ran out on me, so I'm hoping we can go further on this one. And I'll show you the final steps, at least most of the final steps. So again, in the bottom of this 18-gallon tote, I have peanuts already. I'm going to go ahead and lift this 35-pound machine and get it inside of that tote. And again, you have to kind of adjust a little bit sometimes, because this is a rigid handle on this, and it may be pushing it up just a little bit too high. And we may have to also kind of work it down a little bit, just so we don't have that sticking up quite as far. And I better not forget to write Lori a personal note either. I'll write it right on top here. I better put a little bit more tape over that, or you're not gonna be able to read it. Try writing on bubble wrap sometime. It is impossible. I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not, but I wrote "Have fun, Lori," and it's a little smudged after my failed attempt to write on bubble wrap. Now you know not to try that. And then I always put a little piece of tape over it just to keep that from smudging further. So, all right, so now we're going to add peanuts around this to create another barrier of protection from what we've already done. Or I should say, to supplement what we've already done. Oh, well, you know what? Well, actually, I can wait on that. And I think I'm going to have some stray peanuts that are on my table. I can grab those once we get that in place. And again, you always want to make sure you shake that container, because there's a lot of empty space that can occur when you're pouring these in, and you don't want to have that empty space. Again, the more we have this acting as a single unit, the better it's going to protect Lori's machine. Say I gave that a shake, and the sides where those levels were way up dropped quite a bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more peanuts to that, just to protect from side impact as well. Again, I think it's more likely that it's going to get damaged from top down, but you just never know. So we try to eliminate every opportunity from this machine getting damaged in transit. Especially considering it was a machine that I gave away in a contest. That makes it even more important to me that it gets to Lori just like Bunny's got to Oregon without any issues. I don't want any issues for Lori either. So, all right, so our next step now is we're going to get our cover on, and then we have to begin the process of anchoring the cover to the base, which is, you want to talk about a workout. And I usually do it lengthwise first. I'm going to check my shot. I might have to widen my shot just a little bit, because this thing is a beast. Whoops, wrong way. So we're going to follow the same regimen. We're going to use a combination of stretch wrap to anchor it, and then lots and lots and lots of tape so we can raise that tensile strength level considerably. And actually I'm going to do lengthwise first. So I'm to get it really close to the edge of the table. Widen my shot a little bit more so you can kind of see what I'm working with. And we're going to do about approximately seven loops on both sides, lengthwise, to make sure that this case is nice and secure. You can kind of see this after traveling, whatever it is, from Wisconsin to Bunny out in Oregon. This outside strapping process, you could see in her photos that she took, was still completely intact. So you might be saying initially with a little bit of skepticism, wait a second, aren't you just using stretch wrap and tape? Well, I am, but again, it's that factor of when you take a bunch of cords, and you bind them together, which is actually a biblical reference where it talks about many cords make for it being much stronger. All of a sudden, your line of defense, when you're taking stretch wrap and tape, it's like using metal banding on it, because you're putting it all together. You're making it all, just like we've done in the rest of this process, you're making it all a single unit. And that's exactly Murphy's Law, which I believe it was Bill that raised the question about Murphy's Law the last time in our premiere. My tape ran out. I was kind of expecting it though. I was expecting it because it was getting fairly low, and I do not skimp at all when I'm wrapping a machine up when it comes to the use of tape and stretch wrap and stuff, as you probably have already observed. And no, I don't own stock in either one, you wiseacres. All right, let's get some more music going, because that's my inspiration when I'm doing a workout like this. Okay, so what we need to do now is resume increasing that tensile strength and that wrap on this first wrap edge piece here. And we're going to replicate exactly the same thing on the other side. And as you add these layers, you want to just do a light press down there. Okay, so I got my first one done, and you really want to press it down nice and good, get all that popping sound out of there, which means we bound them together just like every other step of the packing process. And when we bind them together, all of a sudden you increase the strength of that strap exponentially. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Normally at this point I would put the label with Lori's name and address in the middle, but I'm going to refrain from doing that just to honor her privacy until I end the video. So again, we're going to do the same thing on this side as far as strapping that. I'm going to bring it far enough out. I kind of keep my hip there just in case it decides to kind of tilt out. And I am applying a reasonable amount of pressure down so that it's pushing that lid down nice and tight. Again, the less movement that you allow, the less likely you are to have a mishap when it's traveling. This is not going to be traveling as far out to Virginia Beach from Wisconsin as Bunny's did, but I'm still not going to cut any corners in the process because you never know what's going to happen in that 1,500 miles, or when I recently sent that machine out to Japan. Well, you can look it up and put it in the chat if you'd like, what the distance is from Wisconsin to Tokyo, Japan. That's a good walk. So I'm just going to tack this down real quick, and then we'll resume increasing that strength by encasing this stretch wrap in multiple layers of this commercial tape. And I got to kind of wiggle it out again so I can get underneath it. When you're on the edge like this, you always want to keep some part of your body near to the case, because it's not likely that, well, I would say it's almost impossible at this point that it's going to get damaged if it falls off the table, but you just don't want that to happen because we haven't finished our packing process yet. Alright, so now we're doing our press down on it. All that popping you can hear is getting all those air bubbles out and binding all of that tape and that stretch wrap together as one unit. Again, that's going to be our secret in affording the highest degree of protection for this 185J heading out to Virginia Beach, Virginia. So now we have the easier part of rotating the case. And now we're going to bind both ends of it over the top of these other straps that we've already created. And that happens. This is real strong stuff, but I guess I'm a little bit stronger than it. And I just tore it on that final little loop. See if I can get some tape on it so I don't lose everything I just did. And that's what can happen, because it's got enough spring on it when you're pulling it around the case like this, the tote, that if you somehow let loose of that stretch wrap and it doesn't stick to the other stretch wrap, you're going to be chasing that thing and then trying to rewrap it, and you might as well just start over at that point. So I've got it anchored pretty good at this point, so we should be in good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and continue my wrap process, but first of all, give us just a little bit more country folk music to listen to while we're doing it. You have to kind of steer this a little bit as you're going, because your goal is going to be that the tape is going to cover the edges of the stretch wrap that you already have on there, so that it doesn't weaken that bond. Okay? We'll do the same thing here. We're going to press it down. And we'll turn it around. And we'll bind the final corner of this tote, and then we'll take a couple additional steps. Hopefully we'll have enough SD card space and battery power to do that, because I do want you to see between these two videos of Bunny's machine and Lori's machine, I want you to see my packing process from start to finish, in a sense. And if you're counting the number of loops I've done, I'm sure it's not exactly 7 or 8, but it's probably going to be pretty close to that. I think this stretch wrap I'm using, and I may have this a little bit wrong, but I believe it's 80 gauge. Stretch wrap, like anything, comes in levels of strength, and I tried to get the strongest that I could while it's still being practical to use it. So some of these stretch wraps are used for palletizing things, and I guess in some sense we are palletizing this machine, but it still has to be something that I can work with, because again, I'm an army of one. Again, press that down nice and hard. Get all those pops out as best as you can. Now the next thing we're going to do, again, the whole principle of my packing process is anchoring everything so it becomes one unit. So we have to do the same thing with these straps that are lengthwise and widthwise. We've got to anchor those down as well. And we just do that through putting a couple binding pieces of tape on there, so that those straps are not going to wiggle from side to side or move in any way. We don't want anything to move. Movement when you're shipping something means the potential for damage or the potential for whatever your packing method is for it to be compromised. So now these two straps here are one. They're not going to move anywhere. We have to do it 3 more times now on top. And I usually use about 2 or 3 pieces of tape on each side. If you use 2, it's fine. If you use 3, it's fine. It's not going to make that much of a difference. It's more peace of mind at this point. So now we've anchored all 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all one unit now, just like every other step of the process that we've done. Now we have to go to the bottom of the tote, and I may have to change my camera shot for that, because what we're going to do to the bottom is make sure that that's protected as well, because when people are lifting something super heavy, what do they have a tendency to do? They have a tendency to drag it, right? So we want to make sure that that bottom doesn't get compromised if someone gets to a point where they're dragging it around and the surface that they're dragging on is a little bit rough. So we try to reinforce that as well. And I'm going to grab my chair, I think, so I can get down to that level and do it a little bit more easily. So we're basically here on both sides. We're connecting these 2 sides. This strap coming down, this strap coming down, and we're giving it horizontal strength now as well. So if they drag it around, it's not going to pull these straps out and potentially cause them to give out. Oh, there's that wonderful static electricity again. It's so much easier to pack a machine in the summertime, generally, because you don't have that static factor to deal with. All right. So what you're seeing in all these steps is what you missed in Bunny's video, because my camera pooped out. All right, so now we've joined this, and this, and it's all one unit on the bottom. But now we're going to reinforce this part right here just a little bit more, because again, that's going to be the area that's going to get the most rubbing if someone's dragging Lori's tote around as they're moving it around the different postal locations. So we do a little bit of crisscross here just to reinforce what we've already done on the bottom. All right. Other than putting Lori's label on there, we are done. So if you combine the 2 videos, you'll have to let me know how long our process is. I developed this just over the years, and I'd be curious to get that feedback. Curious to get that feedback for sure. So I'm going to try to sneak into this shot real quick. And for those of you that hate country folk, I won't put any more on right now. But I'm going to move the camera over just a little bit. Hopefully a little bit, not a lot of bit. So this ends the process now of the contest that I ran back at the end of October. I think it was October-November time frame, and Lori and Bunny won these really cool 185s. Again, the 185K is already out in Oregon, and Bunny is already putting that machine to work. This machine now, the 185J that Lori won, is going to head out to Virginia Beach, Virginia. And that wraps up all the loose ends of what has to be put into motion and put into place to run a contest of that magnitude. And just as soon as I get done with this contest, we are only about 200 subscribers away from potentially running another contest like this. So I'm not going to get any rest, and that's okay. So thanks for watching this video on the second phase of packing a vintage sewing machine, or I think I put it, the science of packing a vintage sewing machine part 2. All right, so thanks so much for watching this video. Thanks so much for being a subscriber. And again, ladies, Bunny and Lori, congratulations on winning. We're going to be doing this all over again really, really soon. So take care, folks. And I'll wrap it up with just one more little ditty of country folk. At least I think it's country folk. Oh, this is a fun one. Round Up on the Prairie. Watch where you step.